My name is Matic Čufar. I'm a PhD student at the university, at the Faculty of Economics and Business at the University of Maribor. And together with Professor Andreja Primec, we prepared the following paper titled Key Stakeholders Identification and Channels of Dialogue Used for their engagement. So when we were looking for potential topics to prepare this paper, we wanted to find a connection between the non-financial reporting directive and the adopted proposal on corporate social reporting directive, and between the corporate social responsibility. And what we found is that both mention the importance of key stakeholders. For example, if you look at the definition of corporate social responsibility, the last part of it clearly states that companies must improve the quality of life of their workforce and their family, as well as the local community and society at large. This is the definition of Council of Sustainable Development. And on the other hand, the non-financial reporting directive also indicates that companies shall include now, so the companies which are obligated to report shall report now their key stakeholders, their channels of dialogue used to communicate with them, and the results which were applied based on the discussion, based on the information which they received from their key stakeholders. And when we find this connection, we knew that our paper will be focusing on key stakeholders. In addition, we also reviewed the papers which were published by authors in this respect, by different authors in this respect, and many of them provided evidence that corporate social responsibility, the profitability of a company, and the creation of value for key stakeholders is connected and depends on each other. So based on our initial research, we then prepared our paper, and in which we did the comparison between key stakeholders identified by theoretical frameworks and the key stakeholders determined by companies in practice. So basically what we did is we reviewed research papers and took 4 theoretical frameworks and their network of key stakeholders described in it. And on the other hand, we took 27 companies, 9 blue chip companies in each of the countries, so Slovenia, Austria, and Germany, and compared their reporting of key stakeholders. In addition, we also reviewed and compared the channels of dialogue described by companies in practice. So whether the companies described their channels of dialogue with key stakeholders, and how was the information used which they received back from the key stakeholders. The methodology was direct content analysis, meaning that the reports were manually reviewed for the financial year 2022. All reports were reviewed twice, and based on a pre-prepared scorecard, we then gathered our results. In the below stated table, you can see all the companies which were included in the research. The results from the review of theoretical frameworks. For the definition of key stakeholders, we took the definition from Freeman and Clarkson that are listed in the table above. Freeman describes key stakeholders as any group or individual who can affect or is affected by achieving the organization's objectives. And Clarkson, on the other hand, also defines stakeholders as persons who influence or affect, or are influenced or affected by the corporation, but they are not engaged in transactions with the corporation and are not essential for its survival. And afterwards, we then took four theoretical frameworks which were used in different articles often, and excluded the following key stakeholder groups, which are listed below. So all of these theoretical frameworks included the following groups in their network of key stakeholders, and these are customers, employees, trade associations, suppliers, financiers, special interest groups, media, and competitors. And if we now go on the results from the practical part, here we analyze the results of the reporting by companies in practice, and from our results we could see that from all 27 companies, 23 reported the key stakeholders in their reporting. 4 companies did not identify their key stakeholders. On average, companies reported in Slovenia and Germany 7 stakeholders, and in Austria 9. What is also interesting is the second part, in which we investigated the channels of dialogue. And here we saw that from 23 companies that reported key stakeholders, 16 of them described channels of dialogue in detail, meaning that they provided information for each of the key stakeholder groups on how they communicate with them. And 13 companies provided also the information on how this information, which was gathered from key stakeholders, was used for example, to find for future developments and so on. And based on the research, we also prepared a model of key stakeholders, which was used by companies in practice. The results show the conclusion, and the results show that the groups identified by theoretical frameworks and the groups of key stakeholders identified by companies in practice are very similar. The only difference is that companies might use a different naming for a particular key stakeholder, but their definition is the same as, for example, as the one described by in theory. But more the more interesting part of the results is that the analysis of the channels of dialogue, because we saw that some companies tend to report a lot of that they have a lot of key stakeholders, but they don't have appropriate communication channels established with them, because some companies tend to provide a large amount of key stakeholders, but they do not describe what information was gathered from them and how this was used. And this leads to the assumption that there is a risk that companies only report their key stakeholders, but they don't have communication channels behind established with them. That's all from my side. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Matic. I agree with you that communication tools and channels are very important to raise awareness on the topic. So the idea of IRDO Institute 18 years ago, when I was founder of it, was to raise awareness through communication campaigns on the topic. And now it is coming to this through the whole world somehow, through legislation and so on. So it's very interesting, and communication is basis for everything that we are doing somehow. And it's connecting us to holistic behavior, maybe too. So thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you.
Would someone like to add something or ask him something?
Hello.
Yes. Oh, Andreja. Hello.
Hello, everyone. I don't have much to say because Matic's done a very good job, but because Anita, you mentioned legal acts as a lawyer, I have something to add, maybe just an information which could be interesting for you, because European Union almost adopted a new legal act on sustainability reporting, which is mandatory and which demands from companies to define those stakeholders channels, because this is the first step to know to whom you have to report all these sustainable issues. That's all. Thank you.